Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 286. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest is the author of Beast of Prey and a lover of all things monsters and magic. Welcome, Ayana Gray.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Sure. So, again, my name is Ayana Gray. Previously, I worked in higher education, but more recently, I have transitioned into becoming a full-time author, and my debut, Beasts of Prey, the first in a trilogy, will publish this September in just over a month. It's a young adult fantasy, although I think anyone from all ages can certainly enjoy it. But it's a story that follows two Black teens as they venture into a magical jungle to hunt down a monster that has been menacing their city for nearly a century. And this is what I'd like to say is a Pan-African story. A Pan-African inspired story in that all of the characters in the story are Black, and there is representation and inspiration that comes from across the African continent, as well as from some of the thought leaders and really important leaders in the Pan-African movement from the 1960s. So full of monsters, mythology, and magic, and I hope you enjoy it.
Talk about your transition from work or higher ed to full-time writing.
Sure. So higher ed was something I very much stumbled into. I interned when I was a student at the University of Arkansas and had some really great mentors who wanted me to get professional experience while I was an undergrad. And so through them, I became an intern for the University of Arkansas's advancement office. A lot of people outside of higher ed don't know what advancement is. When they hear it or development, they think of something very different. This is essentially the fundraising arm of the university, and most colleges and universities have an advancement department, big or small. And so I got into the research behind it. In other words, I like to tell people that I spied on rich people and I would do the research to find donors who might have an interest in giving to the University of Arkansas. So I did that as an intern, and then was fortunate to receive a job offer after I graduated, and kind of went straight into it. And was lucky that I had a really great team, a really great boss, but there was a piece of me that wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't really doing what I loved. And so I did the very untraditional thing and sort of took a gap year in the wrong order. And so I left that job at the University of Arkansas after about a year and went to go live in Australia for a whole year and travel and get outside of my comfort zone. And it was a really wonderful time. I highly recommend everybody travel if and when you can, once the world looks a little less chaotic. Got back and was kind of like, now what? And higher ed kind of called to me again, this time at the University of Florida. So I worked at the University of Florida. And again, I was enjoying my work there, but I wasn't doing what I naturally love to do. And in fact, I was writing at nighttime and on the weekends because that's what I actually loved. I was raised by parents who stressed the importance of being able to, be independent and look after yourself. So even though I loved writing, I wanted the stability of a full-time job that had benefits that allowed me to pay my bills, even if it didn't make me as happy. So I kind of stumbled into this online community when I moved to Florida because I didn't know anybody in Florida. So I had no friends, no real support system. I stumbled into this online writing community and for the first time found like-minded people who encouraged me to keep writing, who encouraged me to keep going. And that's actually how I ended up finishing my first book, which is Beasts of Prey. I pitched it in an online pitching contest called DV Pit. It's specifically a pitching contest for marginalized creators. So I pitched it, I literally put it in a tweet. This is what my book is about. Some literary agents showed interest and I sent off my book to them. One of them offered representation. And then we worked on it together for about 9 months, took it out to publishers. And I was fortunate that Penguin Random House chose to acquire it. And, I say all this to say it was a really long journey. And after Beasts of Prey was acquired, I was like, okay, this is really exciting. Should I work full-time as an author or should I continue to work at the University of Florida? And it took me several months to make the decision to shift, mostly because demand and the time was it was increasing. And I didn't feel like it was fair to try to, do halfway, do both halfway. And so I made the decision in May to transition to full-time, being an author full-time. So it was a long journey. I'm glad that I waited, but it's such a joy to get to do what I love as my full-time career.
Talk about going to Australia, yet your book is set in Africa.
Yeah, I do want to say it's not necessarily set like in true Africa. This is a world, and when you think about movies like Black Panther, where it's an imaginary country within Africa, it's certainly inspired by different pieces of the African continent, but it's a made up world. I went to Australia because as a kid, totally honest with you, I watched a show called The Crocodile Hunter. And with the conservationist Steve Irwin, who I thought was the coolest guy. I loved animals as a kid and just thought Australia is the place where all the cool animals are. I'd always wanted to go, but hadn't really ever had a plan or felt like I could do it safely or responsibly because I'm the oldest and I have to do everything responsibly. And then someone kind of said, I just try it, stop making excuses and go try it. And so I went, and Australia is its own continent. It's similar to the US, but yet it has very distinct things that are nothing like the US. And I was writing while I was in Australia, while I was traveling, while I was working I was an au pair. So kind of, like a nanny looking after children. And I was writing while I was doing that. So even though the worlds are very different, the idea of getting out of your comfort zone, the idea of facing the things that seem scary, those themes certainly translate in Beasts of Prey.
Talk about you said you're the oldest, and how did your parents take you making this day quit?
I'm lucky in that, like I said, my parents did stress to me that it's important to be independent, that it's important to be able to support yourself. They said, we're always going to be here. We want you to support yourself and never have to worry about who's going to look after me. So they were really supportive when I decided to leave. And I'm the kind of person, I go to my parents anytime I'm about to make a big decision. I always go to them and talk with them. They're like my advisors, my original mentors. So they were totally in support of it. They just encouraged me to be strategic about it and, make sure I had thought about things like health insurance and thought about where am I going to live? How am I going to budget? Because traditionally published authors are paid in a way that can make it sometimes difficult to be full-time. You're paid in increments. So each stage in the process, you are paid a piece. So you're paid in advance, which is a certain amount of money up front. You're paid when you turn in sometimes an outline. You're paid when you turn in the final manuscript, when the book publishes, 6 months after publication, etc. And I'm contracted for 3 books. So the payments are split out even more. So, it took some figuring, okay, how am I going to budget myself? I'm going from not being a salaried employee and knowing exactly how much I'm going to make at a given time to almost being like an independent contractor where I'm getting paid based on the work I do. So they just encouraged me to think through all of those things before I resigned. And I did, and it made the process a lot easier.
Ayana, talk about pivot and the pandemic.
Oh gosh, I think there are a lot of ways to handle it. I think we're still pivoting because we're in this stage of uncertainty. Not sure if the world's going to get better or if we're going to see more of what we saw in, last fall and last winter. What I'm proud of as a global citizen is the way that people have adapted in spite of challenges, and the way that people have learned to bring their work and personal lives together and still establish boundaries. I think that the new work from home mode has created a lot more accessibility for people. I think pivot is a good thing to be able to do, but I also think it's important to understand and to know that it's okay if you can't pivot or if you don't pivot as quickly as others. I know that there were people who adjusted to the work from home situation and the new rules of the pandemic very quickly, and there were people who really struggled. So what I've learned in the last year is to take it at your own pace. Some days are going to be harder. Some days are going to feel like, this is actually not so bad, but to take it at your own pace. We're going to keep pivoting.
How do you personally deal with pivoting?
I'm a planner. I really like to have a plan and know what's happening. So it's been hard. And I'm a futurist. So I'm thinking about 10 years from now, what do I want to be doing? And 5 years from now, and a year from now. The way that I've managed is to kind of start thinking in more of a micro scale. So just this week, what do you want to get done? Today, what do you want to get done? In the next 6 hours, what do you want to get done? Because you can get lost thinking about the future when you don't even know what the future will hold. And that's regardless of the pandemic. I do struggle when I have a plan and then I have to pivot away from it. But I think that's healthy. I think it's made me more adaptive and more, I'm able to deal with change more easily. But again, I'm gentle with myself and I forgive myself when sometimes it feels hard, and celebrate the times when I'm able to pivot quickly.
And speaking of the future, what is in the future for Ayana for the year 1, year 5, and year 10?
Oh, well, the cool thing about writing a trilogy is I have a bit of a timeline and I somewhat of an idea of the future. So Beasts of Prey book 1 comes out this fall. From what I understand, book 2 will come out around next summer. And then book 3 will come out the summer after that, or the fall after that. And so the next few years are going to be promoting book 1 while also writing book 2, while also writing book 3. And I expect that'll keep me pretty busy. But one thing, I'm closer to 30 than 20 now. One thing I've gotten interested in is a lot of self-growth. So reading books about how to take care of yourself mentally, physically, how to be healthier, how to have compassion for people, how to open your mind, how to think outside the box. I've gotten more interested in that as I've gotten older. So, 5 years from now, I'll be happy if I can look back at this moment and say, okay, I've grown. I'm a better person than I was yesterday.
Talk about self-care. What does self-care look like for you?
For me, I'm an ambitious person. I like to be doing, I like to be achieving, which is good. But I think the danger is you look for fulfillment. And if you aren't achieving, you feel like you aren't fulfilled. You feel like you aren't a good person. And so for me, it's been a lot of stepping back and stopping to appreciate things. I've gotten into yoga recently, and specifically it's a candlelight yoga. So at night when it's dark, the yoga instructor lights candles and we sit, and it's breathing and it's stopping and, shutting out the world around you and just checking in with yourself. And obviously we're doing poses and we're stretching and, doing activity, but a lot of it's very thoughtful. So that's a form of self-care I've picked up recently. I love to draw. I've always loved to draw. So sometimes I'll just put in an audiobook and just draw while I'm listening to something. And it's something small that just makes me happy. And that's the thing about self-care. It looks different for everybody, but if it makes you happy, if it makes you relax and feel better, I encourage you to find time in your day to do it, even if it's just 20 minutes. Reserve that time, protect your time. And the thing is, once you establish it and say, okay, every evening or every morning I'm going to do this, you'll find that the people in your life will adjust to that and say, oh, that's so-and-so's time. I'm going to leave them alone and let them have it. So, I encourage everybody to find that little bit of time each day or each week to just do something for yourself.
Look back over the last 30 days. What was your biggest win?
Actually, my biggest win in the last 30 days had nothing to do with my work or, my personal life. I bought a car. And, the first time I bought a car, My dad was with me, and really he bought the car and I just signed everything because I was fresh out of college and just was very intimidated by the idea of dealing with a car salesman. And so this time I went with my brother once, just because my brother happened to know this specific car salesman. But the second time I went, on my own and just made sort of an executive decision and felt really empowered just being able to do that. And, it's a small thing, but I get flustered and intimidated in certain settings. And just, I think about comparing that experience to when I was 22, 23 and had to have my dad with me. Whereas now, at 28, I can do it on my own. That felt really good.
Congratulations. And how did you celebrate that win? And how do you celebrate wins?
I'm still working on celebrating wins. I think, and that you're going to laugh. So the car that I had, it was an old car. And one of the reasons I wanted a new car was because it just had, when your car has like 1,000 issues and you get used to it, you just learn to work around it. One of the things was that I couldn't play music in my old car, and I love music. So just getting to get in that new car and drive it home and put in, music that I love and play it as loud as I want as I drove down the highway. That's one of my favorite little things to do. And just smiling and feeling like, and the other cool thing is like, I bought this car and I paid for this car by doing something that I love. And that's a really cool feeling, knowing that I can support myself by doing what makes me happy anyway, by doing the stuff that makes that I would have done for free. So that kind of little celebration. But I find, sharing with friends, sharing with family who know kind of the journey and can appreciate how far I've kind of come in my personal and professional life, that feels really good. I'm still working on stopping to celebrate my wins, though. My friends and family tell me I need to remember to do that more.
Talk about your top 2 influencers or mentors, and what lessons do they teach you?
So I have to, let's see, I'll go with one from my personal life and one who is, someone who I don't know but really admire. In my personal life, my grandmother is one of my biggest influences, my maternal grandmother. She's a retired librarian from New York. And she was the person who as far as I recall, handed me my first book. She listened to me when I was little. She made me feel heard at a time, when you're a child, I think people often dismiss your thoughts and feelings, but she listened. She and my grandfather. She instilled in me this love of learning and it taught me the power of education and how it opens up worlds and made me excited to learn. I was one of those kids that loved school. She taught me to be compassionate. She taught me to be unapologetic in my strength and, being an intelligent Black woman, not being afraid, not toning myself down to appease anybody else in the room. She and I share a love of ancestry and stories. So she's been a massive influence in my life on a personal level. As far as a non-personal influence, I really admire Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, her grace, the way that she carries herself, because I remember being a teenager when Barack Obama was running for president and seeing the political cartoons and seeing the horrible things that she had to deal with. And really, not because she was running, but because her spouse was running. And she was dragged into so much and mistreated and disrespected in so many ways that no first lady before her had ever been disrespected. And she took it with grace. I read her autobiography last year and learned even more about the things she faced, raising 2 children. I so admire her poise and her elegance. And just, I could gush about her all day, but she's someone who I look up to so much.
What can we do right now to support Beast of Prey?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I'm a debut author, which means, just to be candid, I'm unproven. And this first book out of the 3 is kind of going to set the tone. So if it does really well, that's really great because it sets the tone for the next 2 to do well. Pre-orders, so ordering your copy ahead of sale, that stuff is really great. The publishers see that data and they say, okay, lots of people are wanting it. And that helps other Black authors as well, because it shows there's a market for Black stories. So pre-ordering it is a huge help. It's available like literally anywhere, any bookseller. Talking about it with friends. If you have a young person in your life who enjoys, stories that are magical, or, you think they enjoy this, tell them about it. Also, your local libraries, requesting and saying, we want you to order this book for our local library is massively helpful. So really just sharing and spreading the word as much as possible.
Thank you for that. Tell us what you're most grateful for right now in your life.
I'm grateful. This is maybe going to sound vague, but I'm grateful for the life that I have in this exact moment, because I think about where I was a year ago, and it's so vastly different. My spouse and I were kept apart for a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. He was in another country and their borders shut, and we were not able to see each other. And I've been married for just over 2 years. So we got married and then we were kept apart for a year. And it was incredibly hard. I'm grateful that that's no longer the case. My spouse and I are together and going through life together. I appreciate so many of the little things now because I know what it's like to not have them. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful I've moved back to Arkansas, actually. So a year ago, I didn't have the support system at all. And now I'm back with my family, with my loved ones in a place that I know. And it's made such a difference. And then I'm grateful that, a year ago I was working in a job that really didn't make me happy. And now I get to work for myself and I get to wake up in the morning and do what I absolutely love for a living. So my life in general, I'm grateful for it.
Thank you for that. The word is listening. What is that resounding sound or message that your generation is telling us that we should be listening to?
Goodness, that's a really great question. I think the thing that I think about with millennials, because I'm a millennial, that I'm really proud of, and we just saw it in the wake of Simone Biles and her performance at the Olympics. I think that millennials, number one, are not afraid to ask why. Why do we do things a certain way? And if the answer is because we've always done it that way, that's not good enough. So not being afraid to ask why, but also learning to have real compassion for human beings and giving people grace and stopping to recognize the humanity in our fellow person, learning to accept people as they are, not as you feel they should be. And again, asking why or why not? Why not? Why can't we change this status quo? How can we change this status quo? Why haven't we changed it? So I think, the overall question that I appreciate is why, and I hope we continue asking that.
What book would you recommend and why?
You know what? Right now, I'm reading The Afro Minimalist Guide to Living with Less by Platt. And I read it as I was packing to move back home. It has been so eye-opening. It's so good. It's a book about a woman in her journey to getting rid of stuff that wasn't making her happy and trying to live a more fulfilled life. And she goes into the history of why specifically for Black Americans, our relationship with stuff and materialism is unique. And I feel like she spoke to me. And really, again, I felt like a light was turned on in my mind. I talked about wanting to be a better person and grow every day. And that's one of those books that's helping me to grow a lot, and thinking about why I do the things I do and having intentionality. Fantastic book, highly recommended. The audiobook is lovely because she reads it herself. So it's a good book, like if you're going for a walk or in the store, it's really nice.
I want you to have a monologue, and I want you to name the person you're talking to, living or not. And this person has inspired you so much. Who is that person, and what are you saying to them?
So goodness. I immediately thought of my grandpa, and his name was Aston, Grandpa Aston. He passed away in 2012. And I'm going to get emotional because goodness, I miss him so much. I suppose I would, if I was speaking to him, if I had the opportunity to speak with him, I would say thank you. Thank you so much for putting me on your shoulders when I was little and telling me that I was a great lady, that I was going to do great things, for telling me not to be afraid, for telling me that, it's more important what's what's between your ears and not being afraid to express your thoughts boldly. I wish that every little Black girl had a grandpa like you. Thank you. I mean, the love I have for him still is so vast, and I'm so grateful that I had somebody. Sorry, it really makes me quite emotional because he was such a good man, and it's made all the difference. And so you talk about the impact that you can have on a child's life. You can change a child's entire life just by believing in them, just by listening to them, just by making them feel heard and valued and telling them, yes, you can, in a world that says, no, you can't because of the way you look, because of where you're born, because of your zip code, because of 1,000 reasons. Just telling a kid, yes, you can literally change someone's life and can change the world.
And so sorry for your loss, and thank you for being so authentic. What do you need right now that you don't have to move the needle forward?
Oh, goodness. I think what I need in my personal and professional life that I'm still working on is finding a new routine in this new chapter of my life. Again, I'm a planner. I'm someone that thrives on having an idea of what's coming up ahead. And I'm in a state of transition. So I live somewhere new again. I have my spouse here, and we're adjusting to being sort of delayed newlyweds. And I have a book that's debuting and kind of learning to cope with the things that come my way every day. So for me, I think finding a new cadence in my life is what I need. And I have hope that I'll find it. It may take me some time.
Talk about marriage and your spouse and you going on this whole new journey. And how did he adjust to that?
First of all, it's been fantastic. One of the reasons that I am married to my spouse is that he was probably the first man who I met who was not at all intimidated by my dreams, and was not uncomfortable or insecure in any way about the fact that I had big dreams, and he absolutely encouraged them. There were days where I said, what's the point? There were days where I was like, this is not going to happen. I'm not good enough. No one's going to want this story. And he wouldn't allow it at all, not for a second. Even when we were apart, he was a constant, part of my support system, and refused to accept or believe I wouldn't get to do great things. I think about in my personal life and my dating history, how when I had these big dreams, oftentimes the person I was dating sort of encouraged me or discouraged me from those dreams. And he was the first that was like, I'll happily move to the side. This is your show, and I want it to be yours. So I'm tremendously blessed that I'm married to someone who has had just constant support and love and happiness for me.
That's beautiful. What is the best decision you have made as a leader?
Oh, so this is actually a little further back, in college, actually, a decision at least that I'm proud of. I'm a member of a Black Greek letter organization and at a predominantly white institution. And my specific chapter of my sorority at one point was in danger of dissolving just because, as happens at PWIs, membership was low and there was a concern, are we going to get to continue? And at that time, I was the only active member of my chapter. And my graduate advisor at that time said, okay, Ayana, you have this choice. I know it's your senior year. You're trying to graduate. You're ready to be done, but it's kind of up to you. You can keep this chapter alive by having a membership intake process this fall. Or if you choose not to, that's fine, but the chapter will be no more. Keeping in mind that membership intake, that kind of process within a Greek-led organization, is something that usually takes a team. It takes a chapter. It's a lot of work. And I was scared to do that work by myself, but I did it. Initiated 17 ladies. And through doing that, was able to actually keep my chapter. My chapter is now abundant, healthy, lots of members, and it has a presence at the University of Arkansas. And especially being a predominantly white institution, having that presence of Black women in that capacity, to still have that for girls who are entering the university is really meaningful. And it was a hard thing to do by myself, but I was the president at the time, and I made that choice, and it's literally changed the history of the chapter. So I'm glad that I did it.
Do you want to shout out to your sorority?
I do. Shout out to all of the phenomenal ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Well, we are sorors, so thank you for that.
Hey.
Is there a social cause that's going to be tied to your writing?
Yes and no. I'll say that while I think that writing stories, and they call these stories issue books, stories that deal with the social justice specifically of a group, these stories are important. One thing that I sought to do with Beasts of Prey was to write a story in which Black kids specifically could read a story without having to think about the tough things in life, such as racism, such as oppression, discrimination. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Doesn't mean that these stories, we shouldn't have stories that address them. But as a kid, I felt like I was getting bombarded constantly. The only time I saw stories with Black kids were about, Black kids getting shot, Black kids being bullied by racists, and it mentally took a toll on me. So when I wrote Beasts of Prey, I leaned away from doing that, but I decided to write about other things that were important to me and arguably are social issues. So for example, growing up and, just within my community, I didn't see a lot of discussion around mental health within the Black community, dealing with grief, dealing with trauma, pent up anger, pent up sadness. I didn't see that discussed a lot. And so I chose to write a story in which both of the main characters have to deal with their grief and their trauma and what happens when you let emotion, build up inside of you and you don't face it. That was my kind of way to deal with an issue that was important to me within my community.
And I am so excited that I do have my copy of Beast of Prey. So thank you so much for that. What is the best advice you were ever given?
My mom's advice always stays with me, and it's perennial for me. Just that people are in your life for a season and a reason. And sometimes those seasons last years, and sometimes those seasons are short. And, I think appreciating people while they're in your life is important. And when they naturally leave, sometimes it happens in a way that we don't want. Sometimes it happens organically, but learning to be at peace with that. As a kid, I wanted everybody to be my friend. I wanted everyone to like me. And my mom would just say, Ayana, not everyone is going to like you. It doesn't matter how nice you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Some people just won't like you. And some people, you'll get along with them for a little while and then they'll grow up and you'll grow apart. And you have to be okay with that. Because I hate saying goodbyes. It's something about me personally. I hate saying goodbye to people. I hate losing friendships. But that quote kind of has always stuck with me, a reason and a season.
Absolutely. Talk about legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I hope, and it's hard to think about it because I feel like I'm just in the thick of it right now. I hope that I can be remembered maybe as someone who followed their dreams, who did what they loved without apology, who used something that she loved very much, writing and telling stories, to add to the world, to connect to people in the world. It's hard to think about what I, hope to be like, or what I hope the legacy is when I leave. But I guess if I had children, that's what I would want to be remembered as someone who followed their dreams.
Let's talk about redo. If there is something in your life that you could redo, what would it be and why?
Ooh, if I could redo something. Oh, you know what? Easy. I would redo high school. I would redo high school because, again, I went to a predominantly white high school here in Little Rock. And actually, fun fact, my high school was founded in response to the Little Rock Nine. The white people in this particular area did not want their children to go to integrated schools. So they created a private school for their kids. My parents did not know that when they enrolled us, my siblings and I, but now we know. So I was the only Black girl in my grade, and I was one of a few Black kids in the high school at all. And because of that, I just remember feeling, no pun intended, like a black sheep, feeling like I didn't belong. I did everything in my power to assimilate and not stick out. And I wish I hadn't. I know that when you're a teenager, that's the height of insecurity. It's a natural thing that happens, but I wish I had that. I wish I had the security and certainty that I have now back when I was 17. I think about like straightening my hair, for example. I was damaging my hair. I was doing something that just was not naturally me at all, but I was doing it to fit in. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd just been myself. So I would happily redo it with the mindset that I have now.
What is your zone of genius?
I don't know if it's genius, but I feel most in the zone at night. I'm a night person. So, and I can't do it anymore because I have a puppy and I have to be up pretty early to let her out in the mornings. But between like 11 and 2 a.m., it's like my mind just turns on and suddenly everything clicks. And I find my favorite things that I've written really late at night when it's quiet. And I can't explain it, but I feel like the world comes alive in my head.
And what is your weakness as an entrepreneur?
I think my weakness is my inability to say no. Again, I like to achieve. I'm ambitious, and that's a good thing, but it means that setting boundaries is a hard thing for me. I want to say yes to everything. I want to do everything, even if it's not tenable. And so I've been working on that. Again, personal growth, just trying to be real with myself and say, okay, can you do this? I know you want to do this, but are you giving yourself time and space to recoup? Are you giving yourself time to write? Are you giving yourself time to unwind? So my weakness is my inability to say no and to want to say yes to everything, but I'm working on it.
Talk about being a creator and a writer. Do you find that you're working on your second book? Do you find that you stay true to just writing that book? Or do you have other books that start coming out as you're writing that book?
So writing book 2 has been an experience. Technically, I've written book 2. It's with my editor right now, and she'll send notes to me, and I'll keep working on it soon. I do get other ideas for books, and within the writing community, they're called plot bunnies because they pop around and they kind of distract you. So the trick is finding a plot bunny and learning to differentiate just a plot bunny from a real potential idea, because an idea can sound good in your head, and then when you pursue it, you're like, wait, that's not actually as good as you thought it was. When I get a really strong idea, like I did last night, what I'll do is I'll put it into an ideas folder and kind of write what's on my mind and leave it there. And I know that if I come back to that in a few months and I'm like, yeah, I really like that it's a strong idea. At the moment, though, I'm contracted to write Beasts of Prey, and it's 2 sisters. And so I really am trying to stay focused so that my agent and editor don't freak out. It was the first time I wrote on a deadline, like a real contracted deadline. So that was definitely a change. But the way I've tried to stay true to it is by distancing myself from any reviews, from really reading anything about what people are saying about the book, which sounds weird. But I just kind of shut it out and focus on the story itself.
If you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
And you've asked like some of the coolest questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoy stuff that makes me think. The question I would have asked myself is maybe what I hope people take away from Beasts of Prey as a story. And to answer that, I hope that this is a story about, on its surface, 2 Black kids who've entered into a magical jungle, and there's adventure and all of that. But it's also, again, a story of 2 kids who both have tremendous burdens on their shoulders, who have really difficult pasts, who've dealt with trauma, who have dealt with immense loss, and they're still dealing with it. They're 17, 16 years old. And so, they're dealing with monsters, internal and external. So the message I hope people get from the story is to stop running from your monsters, stop running from those beasts of prey, and face them, because that's where you find freedom and truth, in facing the things that scare you. And I hope that, Black kids can see the story and say, well, she did it, so I can do it.
What have you not done in life that you dream about often that you would like to do?
See, it's always travel for me, going to specific places. So my mother's paternal family is, they're from Barbados. And that's, relevant because I've done, through research, I've actually found the plantation in Barbados where they were enslaved. And so I would really, really like to go to Barbados and visit that plantation my ancestry is erased after a certain point. And so finding those sorts of places and being able to honor those people is really important to me. So I would love to go. It's something on my bucket list.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I want you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready.
Your first job?
Summer camp teacher.
Your favorite color?
Mint green.
The last movie you saw?
The Green Knight.
You relax doing what?
Drawing or reading.
Your favorite dance song?
Dance song, September by Earth, Wind & Fire.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Chocolate chip cookie.
Your favorite month?
July.
Work out or hit the couch?
Hit the couch.
Ayana Gray, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way they can connect with you and do business with you? Feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richards. I really enjoyed talking with you. I am all over the internet. So I'm on Twitter at Ayana Gray, AYANA, GRAY. I'm also on Instagram at Ayana Gray with an underscore at the end. I am on TikTok reluctantly. And of course, my author website is just www.ayanagray.com. If you would like to chat about anything, writing advice, publishing advice, please hit me up there.
Thank you, Ayana. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.